Well, hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. Getting ready to record Mike in the Midwest, episode 64 here in just a second. So stand by. Let's see here. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, ba, bum, ba, bum, ba, bum. All right, let's talk about. I'm talking about grandma stories today. Do you have any? Let's see what you got. All righty. Hey, Margie and Herschel. Hello, hello. I am good except for some allergies. Well, hey, everybody. Happy Thursday and welcome to episode number 64. Holy cow, with Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the exclusive patrons of the Be Our Guest podcast, just like you. Thanks so much for being here and thank you so much for supporting the show. I know you're not supporting Mike in the Midwest. This is just kind of a throw in, a toss in, a bonus. Your monthly donations do help keep the podcast, the big show, going out there 3 to 4 times a week all around the world. We're getting more and more listeners every month. And when we get that, the bill goes up from our host, which is fine because we have to provide more bandwidth and storage and stuff like that. There aren't a whole lot of podcasts out there that serve up over 2,000 episodes. But hey, we're lucky. We are at that point because when you add in some of our bonus shows and live shows, we're well over 2,000 shows on the feed. And that's pretty cool. And I'm excited for episode number 2000 coming up here in the next couple of months. That's incredible. The official episode number 2000. Seems like we're just at 1000. And here we go. We kept it going through the pandemic, still kind of working our way out of that, but we're still here. And, about 18 months ago, I didn't know if we'd still be here. And it's because of you. So thank you so much for that. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman. I'm the host, one of the hosts over at the Be Our Guest podcast with Ricky and Pam and Scott as well. He jumps in there as needed. And I just want to say hello and hope you're having a great day, great night, great afternoon, great morning, wherever this show finds you. That is the great thing about podcasting. We are not live. We're kind of asynchronous, but you get to tune in whenever you like. And hopefully when you hit that play button, either on the Be Our Guest podcast or here on the bonus show, you know that you're going to be able to spend 30 minutes just kind of relaxing, thinking about stuff that's fun, cutting loose from all the seriousness of the world and, being able to kind of hopefully you think of us as a friend. I listen to many other podcasts and when I'm walking, when I'm running, and it's just kind of like having some friends there in my head talking about stuff and making me think and bringing back good memories and stuff like that. So I hope we do the same for you. So thanks for being here, but mostly thank you so much for your support of the show. I couldn't do this without you. And I just want to make sure that I thank you just enough because I know we don't get to say it enough on the big show. At the top and the bottom we do, but thank you so much. All right. So today, how are things going? What's going on? So we're on the Thursday after Labor Day here in the States. The big news here in the Rallman household, just so you can kind of get a little behind the scenes today, Mallory she's leaving school at lunchtime, which is here in about an hour and a half, and she gets her braces off. So she is super, super excited. She's 13. She's had her braces on for a year and a half, I think, ish, maybe 2 years. And today's the day she goes to the orthodontist and gets her braces off, and she thinks that's a huge deal. So my wife, Pam, is taking a half day from work. She's going to pick her up from school. They're going to get lunch. They're going to go to the orthodontist, get the braces off and be super happy. And then guess what? She has cheerleading practice tonight, which is like every night because she's on 2 cheer squads. So that's kind of where we fall with the big news in the household today. Braces coming off. I get that. I had braces. Now check this out though. When I was in high school, I had terrible. Now my teeth aren't great now. I don't know if you know, I've probably mentioned this some point in the podcast or here on Mike in the Midwest. I played a ton of roller hockey in college when I was a speed skater because during college, I walked away from a baseball scholarship, became an inline speed skater, skated all around the country in all these competitions, inside short track, outside, like in Chicago and little towns around Chicago and St. Louis and the Midwest. And there was prize money at the outdoor races. That's why we did those. But I also played a lot of roller hockey because I ran a skating rink. That was my job in college. And we had a lot of, we were really one of the rinks where roller hockey started in the 70s on regular skates, but it really took off with inline skates. So I played a lot of hockey there when I wasn't working. And one day, a teammate of mine went to get the puck. We both went for the same puck, tried to get it from an opponent. So it was 2-on-1, two of us, one of him. He tried to what's called jack his stick so that he would pop his stick up so I could go in and take the puck. And he missed. He missed the opponent's stick, came up. His stick ended up in my mouth, and it ripped out my front two teeth, split my lip open up into my nose, just a big gash, and it was really gnarly. They went and found my tooth. They put it back in. But yeah, my front two teeth, fake. They're fakies. So I know I don't have the best smile ever, but long story long is that I had braces from 6th grade until 11th grade because I had terrible teeth in middle school. So my daughter's complaining for 2 years. Shoot, I had mine on for 5 years. So I was super glad to get those off. And then, of course, after all that money and all that time, boom, get your teeth rearranged with a hockey stick. What can you do? That's kind of how athletes are. But anyway, it's a big deal here in our household this weekend. We don't have to go to Columbia. Our football team, the Mizzou Tigers, are in Lexington, Kentucky to take on the Kentucky Wildcats. So no trip out to Mizzou for me. If you don't know, Mizzou's about 90 minutes from our house. So every time I go to Mizzou, it's 90 minutes out, 90 minutes back. So no traveling for that. And there's no high school football game at home this week. We're not going to go to the away game. It's at Granite City. It's about 45 minutes away. We're going to watch on the internet and be able to get Mexican because we haven't had Mexican for the last 2 Fridays. Exciting stuff, right? Say, Mike, you're killing me with this stuff. But that's kind of what Mike in the Midwest is. Kind of shows you what is going on around my little world. I wanted to give you a little behind the scenes. Nobody has heard this yet. I haven't even shared. I don't know if we've told Ricky this yet. Pam Forrester and I have been talking because we're getting lots of questions. When is the next Be Our Guest podcast cruise? Okay, we've done five or six. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember. We've done multiple Be Our Guest podcast cruises, and they are a blast. We spend 4, 5, 7 days sometimes together on the ship. We have our dining together. We do special events on Castaway Cay. We do special events on the ship. We record a live show while we're on the ship. It's a ton of fun. I mean, it's just so much fun. So we are coming up with a date for the next Be Our Guest podcast cruise, and just throwing this out here. This is the date we're looking at in the ship. Just so you know, if you can think about going, if you're curious about it, if you're not, let me know your thoughts. Again, Mike at beourguestpodcast.com, or that's the best way is just drop me an email because that's kind of, I'll get to that quickest. So we're looking at the Disney Wish next summer because we want to have a new experience, and that ship looks incredible because we've sailed the Dream, we've sailed the Fantasy. Lots of folks have been on the Wonder and the Magic. So we're looking at the Disney Wish July 11th. It's a 4-night Bahamian cruise. So it's not prohibitively expensive because it's a 4-night cruise. The 7-night cruises are awesome, but they get really expensive really fast. So we're looking at July 11th, Bahamian cruise to Castaway Cay into the Bahamas, obviously, on the Disney Wish. So we have to go in the summer this time. Now, maybe next time we don't. My wife's a teacher, so we have to go in the summer because she teaches. But let me know your thoughts if you have any ideas on that. We're looking at July 11th on the Wish. Nothing set in stone. We haven't announced it yet, but I wanted to give that to you guys first because you guys are the top of the line here with the podcast. Okay, let's get to the feedback from last week's show. That's how we always start each week off. And last week I talked about Mike's Midwest. I talked about what things are like here where I live, like in this little pocket of St. Louis, which is across the river. I mean, it's the St. Louis metro area, but I live in St. Peters, which is in St. Charles County, which is about 20 miles from downtown. I kind of talked about like where do we shop? Like, what's the name of our grocery stores? We don't go to Publix. We don't have Winn-Dixie's. We have Deerbergs and Schnucks. What kind of fast food restaurants do we have? I wish we had Zaxby's. I wish we had Crystals, but we don't have those. We do have White Castles and stuff. So we talked about that last week. Now, here's some feedback from last week's show. Dennis, my good friend down in Texas, who is from St. Louis, but is not here anymore. He says, the top St. Louis things I miss from living there are Lion's Choice. Again, if you don't know, that's a fast food roast beef sandwich shop. So good. And I mean, that thing is right across the street from my house. Emo's Pizza. It's flat pizza that has provolone cheese. Is that what it is? Yeah, it's a different kind of cheese. It's so good though. frozen custard, and the Pasta House. Yes, we have an Italian kind of a chain place called the Pasta House. It's a sit-down restaurant, kind of not expensive pasta, but it's dang good. Pasta House, if you ever come here. He says, we don't have Schnucks or Deerbergs, but we do have HEB grocery stores. Mike, this might deter you from ever visiting, but we don't have many Taco Bells. Whoa. I thought Dennis was in Texas. Would there not be Taco Bells on every corner? And let me just say this as an aside. If you go to my Twitter from yesterday, so from Wednesday, somebody sent, I follow all these 80s retro accounts because I really love the retro video games, the retro stuff from when I grew up. I think everybody's kind of the same way. Somebody sent a picture, like a meme that said, this is the Taco Bell that I remember. And if you looked at it, this is exactly the Taco Bell that I remember. They had a different look to them. Like now the color's kind of purple with Taco Bell, but this was back when it was like oranges and browns. It kind of reminded me of the San Diego Padre color scheme in the 80s. And everything on the tray looked immaculate in the picture. You had a Pintos and cheese in the little cup. You had a tostada. Those were so good. I got those all the time. And all the burritos and tacos just look so good. I'll be honest. When I was a kid, Taco Bell was like, we didn't go to Taco Bell because it was expensive. We went to a place called Zantigo's, which I don't know if there were ever any other Zantigo's. There were two that I knew of in St. Louis because the one was kind of by our house. We go there for the most part. And they had like, 49-cent tacos. And they had these things called Chilitos, which were chili cheese burritos that were 99 cents. And they're really good. We also had one by our church. So on Sunday nights after church, we go to Zantigo's and get something to eat. Anyway, I don't know if you had Zantigo's, but that was the cheap Taco Bell. So I never got to go to Taco Bell as a kid. So I'm making up for it now. Anyway, Dennis continues. However, throw a rock in any direction, you're likely to hit a Mexican restaurant or a taco place. Whataburger is popular in Texas. Let's see. They have the Texas cheeseburger chain. He says, I'll admit at the risk of having my Texas citizenship revoked that I prefer In-N-Out, which started opening franchises here over the past dozen years. Thanks for the great bonus show, Mike. Dennis. Well, thank you, Dennis. I'll be honest. Here's the deal. I've never had In-N-Out. Now, my dad, who works for the Rams. So again, I've talked about this on the show, but my dad lives a mile from me. He lives right here where I live, next subdivision over, basically. But he still works for the Rams because he worked for the Rams when they were here in St. Louis. He kept his job when they moved to LA. So he flies and meets the team wherever they are on the weekends. So when he's in LA, obviously half of the games, actually more because when they play the Chargers, he always gets In-N-Out. He's like addicted to In-N-Out. And my dad likes plain stuff. He's not a fancy eater at all. He's like a page. Doesn't like fancy stuff. But he always talks about In-N-Out. Now, I think I had Whataburger once. Now, I don't know, but this is back in the days when we used to drive. And I want to say there was a place called Whataburger in Gainesville, Florida. The exit where the U of F is, University of Florida. And I'm pretty sure we had Whataburger there. It was orange, I think, as I recall. But this was years and years ago. But I thought I liked it, but I'm not sure. So interesting. Thanks, Dennis, for the feedback. And let's see if we have any other feedback here. We do. And let's see here. So Herschel and Margie, thank you so much for being patrons and joining us here. Hey, Mike, how are you? I live in Aurora, Illinois. I got a Jewel by me. It's a grocery store. Okay, see, I'm running the Chicago Marathon in like 3 weeks. I need to get I run a lot in the mornings, but I haven't gone past 13 miles. That's 26. I better start picking it up. Let's see. He says, I got an Oberweis. You could get ice cream and milk, and it is so good. We do have Oberweis in our neighborhood. We have two I know of within 5 miles of us. It's expensive. That's why we don't go to Oberweis, but we've had ice cream there. It is good, rich ice cream. And a couple of times I've bought whole milk there in the glass jugs like my grandma used to get. And I'll talk about my grandma here in just a minute. And let's see here. So they Herschel and Margie say, thank you so much. Thank you guys. Okay. Crystal Search says, hey, Mike, Crystal from Chicago here. Chicago representing here, Chicago metro area. After listening to this episode, I wanted to share that Jewel Osco is a grocery store and a pharmacy. Jewel is the grocery part and Osco is the pharmacy. Okay, good. See, I did not know that. And I listen to all these podcasts from Chicago. In Chicago, there used to be Dominic's, but they were bought out by Pete's Fresh Market or Mariano's. It's owned by Kroger. I live near the Indiana border and do a lot of shopping there because of the Chicago taxes. They too have Jewel as well as Strack and Van Til. Oh, I shop at almost all the grocery stores, and I'm definitely a Target shopper, even though there's a Walmart closer to my house. Target just gives me a more calming shopping experience, whereas Walmart feels like constantly holiday shopping chaos. You are exactly like my girls. They will not go to Walmart with me. So I don't know if I mentioned this last week. Walmart, I saw on social media, is selling real authentic trapper keepers. Now, you got to be my age. If you're younger, you're not going to remember what a trapper keeper was. A trapper keeper was this kind of organizer that was like, it had a legal pad inside it. It had some folders, had a pad of paper, some pockets. And on the outside, it would have a picture of like a Lamborghini or some kind of cool space design. So apparently Walmart was selling these. I keep getting the ads on Instagram. So the other day I was trying to get Mallory to go with me. She will not go to Walmart. She says it's crazy, which Crystal just confirmed apparently. I went up there and looked. It was like holiday chaos. I went to the school supply line area of the store. I mean, it was picked clean. There was like one number 2 pencil that somehow somebody dropped and it was laying there. There was nothing. Couldn't find a trapper keeper. So my girls do the same thing. They go to Target, but Walmart is just an experience, right? I went to Walmart and I found a Ms. Pac-Man machine, which I really want because I got the Pac-Man machine for Father's Day a couple years ago. Like, there's just cool stuff. There's like little retro plug and play video game things. I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff you don't need, but I always say it's an experience. Okay. Mr. Chris Armstrong is joining me here on the Patreon. Thank you for supporting us over here, Mr. Armstrong. Appreciate that. Hey, Mike, great podcast as always. You brought back some great memories of volunteer fire station towers that would sound to call its people before cell phones and pagers. That's the second person to say that. I had no idea that they would ring these, what I called the tornado siren, to get everybody to come back to the firehouse. This is why I love our community, because every time we get together, we can learn things indirectly. You know, that tornado siren just scared the crud out of me when I was a kid, because I always pictured the tornado was going to swoop down on me at any second. But I didn't know they also had these kind of secondary uses. He says, on a side note, can I comment on the new Coke Zero? Because you've been drinking it now for a couple of weeks. Okay, yes, I can. And I have a can right here that I'm drinking. Let me take a drink. My wife asked me the same thing, because now the Coke Zero is in a red can. It used to be in a black can. I think it actually tastes better than the old Coke Zero. And I was mad about the changes because I love Coke Zero. Here's the thing. I think it tastes almost exactly the same. This is probably bad, but I think it has some kind of ingredient that makes you want to go get another can. It's more addicting than the old Coke Zero, and the old Coke Zero is pretty addicting. I don't know. It is good. So no sweat. If you haven't tried the new Coke Zero and you're a Coke Zero fan, I think you're going to be fine. All right, last feedback, and then we're going to get to the main section of the show today for about 15 minutes. Trisha Hellwig, thanks for being a patron. In Southeast Wisconsin, we have the typical Walgreens, Targets, etc. We do have a local Piggly Wiggly and the best sandwich place, the Chocolate Shop. Think Subway combined with an ice cream parlor, but they use Cedar Crest ice cream, another local hit. Wait a second. I got to think about this again. Hang on. Think Subway combined with an ice cream parlor with really good ice cream. Holy cow. Okay. Where's my phone? I'm looking up Southeast Wisconsin. It's probably about 7 hours from here. Yeah, I'll have to make a trip up, Trisha. That sounds good to me. So thanks everybody for giving that feedback. If you don't know, the feedback is my favorite part of every Mike in the Midwest. I love hearing from you. That way it's a two-way conversation. So if you have any feedback on this show or any other shows, just drop by patreon.com/BRGuestPodcast. Leave some feedback under this week's show, and I will share it on next week's show. All right, to today's topic. And this topic, very informal. It came to me last night as I was kind of just sitting around right before bed, getting everything organized for today. And I was thinking about my grandma. Now, my grandma I think I've talked about my grandpa, right? I played golf with my grandpa. My grandpa was a deacon in the church. We built an MG together. He bought it when I was 10 for $500 from a coworker that he worked construction with. And it was just a piece of crud. It was all beat up, didn't run. And we worked on it for like 5 or 6 years, painted it, got it all fixed up. And then I got to drive it when I was 16. So I spent a lot of time with grandpa. I was always over at my grandparents' house. So this is my grandparents, Rallman, my dad's parents. And so, but my grandma Rallman. And for some reason, her name was Ruth. but everybody called her Rufus, and I don't know why. It was something with my dad and my uncle. I have no idea. It was a joke. There was a singer in the 70s called Rufus, I think, or a band. My grandma was as conservative, like think Andy Griffith, Andy's mom. Like she was super conservative, always at church. I never heard her say a bad word or a mean thing in my entire life, ever. Always doing something for somebody else. So my grandma was just, I mean, if you, and I know we probably all think the same way about our grandparents, but I sure do. Now my grandpa would swear. He was a deacon at the church, but if something didn't go right sometimes, he got fired up. That's why I love my grandpa. He was real. Grandma was unbelievable because she never got mad, and she had 3 grandsons and a granddaughter that should have gotten her mad constantly, and she never showed it, which was amazing. So grandma's been gone here for probably about I would say 5 or 6 or 7 years. I remember she passed the day after I finished my first dopey challenge because she had slipped into a coma and I had gotten home. She was in the hospital while I was down over marathon weekend, and she took a turn for the worse the day that I got back. And I went down the next day. My dad was there, my uncle was there, and I brought my medal, my dopey challenge medal, to show her, hey, look, your oldest grandson who hated running actually did a full marathon and did all these 48 miles and stuff. But she was in a coma and she passed the next day. So I showed it to her. She didn't ever get to see it because she was in a coma. But that's how I kind of remember it. It's kind of my last time seeing grandma. But just I wanted to share some stories because I was thinking about grandma. Like the other day, I don't know what it was, something I saw on TV or something I listened to on another podcast. But I wanted to share some of the fun things my grandma did with us as grandkids. And then I want to get your feedback on like what your grandma or grandpa or just a loved one in your family might have done with you. It was just weird. Like when you look back on it, it's kind of weird. One of the things, okay, so again, I said 3 grandsons and my sister was her granddaughter. So she had 4 of us. I'm the oldest. Then my cousin Chris and Derek, they're both from down in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, down by Arkansas. And then my sister, she's the youngest. So we were all within 4 years of each other. So we were all close together in age. And when my uncle would come up to visit, he played golf in St. Louis a lot. He was a real estate agent. They would come up and they would stay for 2 or 3 days up here in St. Louis. And it was awesome. Like when my cousins came, it was just everything stopped. I got to hang out with Chris and Derek. They were like, I didn't have any brothers, so they were like my brothers. And we would stay at grandma's with them. And it was like a slumber party for 3 days. It was the best times ever. One of the things my grandma did was, this is so funny looking back on it. Now, maybe you got to be like, go to church like I did or be Baptist, but I don't think you do. She would always say, like, we're just sitting there like watching TV, like watching Sale of the Century or some, Press Your Luck or something on TV, all 4 of us. She'd say, we're going to have the Lord's Supper. She would say this. You might think, okay, what's this all about? So what that meant to her was like, it was like snack time. And this, I wish because we don't have her, we sold her house. It's not very far from here, but she had this little step that went between the living room and the kitchen. And it was 1 step. And the step was only as high as 1 regular brick laying on its side. So think maybe 2 inches. It was really, really a small step, just kind of like a landscaping, just kind of a decorative type thing. So then you went into the kitchen. And it was only about between the 2 walls where you passed from the living room to the kitchen. It was probably about, like a doorway wide, right? It was about as wide as a door would be. All 4 of us would sit our rears on that step. Boom, 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 boom. And we all fit, which cracks me up right now because my big old rear, like that'd be it. Like nobody else is getting in. It's just me. Anyway, she would say it was the Lord's Supper and we get all excited. Like it's, oh yeah, we're having the Lord's Supper. Because my grandma, again, her dad, my grandma's dad was a preacher back in Kentucky. And so yeah, she was raised in a very religious house, and I was raised in a very religious house too. So anyway, what this meant was we were getting Ritz crackers. Sometimes we got a little peanut butter on top or cheese. You don't get that at church, but a little bonus. And we all got a little shot of grape juice. And so we would all 4 sit there. We'd have a couple of Ritz crackers and cheese or maybe peanut butter, our little, small little glass of grape juice. We'd pray. And that was our snack. We had the Lord's Supper. But when I think back at grandma, she was so funny because I know she worried for our souls because we were nice kids, but we were mischievous kids when we all four got together. So she was probably thinking, oh my gosh, what did they do yesterday? They were beating each other up. We better have the Lord's Supper to maybe save their souls. We always did that with grandma. Another thing with grandma that I recall that I thought was very cool. Grandma always worked. She did a couple jobs that were kind of interesting. She drove a school bus for the school district that she lived in. So, and that's actually the school district where my wife still teaches, Ferguson Florissant. And it's the school district I taught in for 17 years. So grandma, back in the day when I was like in elementary school, I didn't know this. I never rode her bus, but she was a bus driver. Again, my grandma was this little conservative, quiet, kind lady, and she drove one of those big old yellow school buses. I never saw it, and I still can't picture it. But my grandpa would always tell me, because my grandpa was a construction worker, and so he worked all different places, wherever they were building houses or putting in driveways. He was a cement mason. So he would say, like they'd be working on a job, and grandma would come by on her bus route, and she'd go boop boop, and all the guys there would be like, Charlie, there's your old lady. She's driving by on the bus. How construction workers are. And he'd be all proud that grandma was driving the double clutch bus. And I always heard about that. Never got to see that, but it was it's funny because at that point, she wasn't really the grandma that I remember, right? She wasn't, you're not just grandma. As you're a person in life, you're a kid, you're a teen, you're a young adult, then you're a parent, then you're a grandparent, right? And I mean, she just wasn't like, I only remember her as grandma, but I guess, maybe then she was just, not in that, that stage of life. That's so fun. Grandma also worked at grocery stores. The one I remember was we had a grocery store called Tomboy. That was about 3 blocks from my house growing up before we moved in 6th grade. And I just remember how cool it was because my buddy Ryan, who lived across the street, we did everything together until I moved in 6th grade, just like a brother. We would, get home from school and we'd always ride bikes. He had his Mongoose. I had my Huffy. We go riding all around the neighborhood, but we always rode to Tomboy when my grandma was working. At the front of Tomboy, they had a Centipede and a Pac-Man machine. They also had those little machines. I don't know if you remember them, but you put a quarter in and they had like little, just little junky toys that were in these little capsules. And so and some of them were stickers and stuff like that. They had all that stuff at the front of the store. So we waste our money there. Or they had a toy aisle in this little grocery store. Maybe we go back there and get like a Parachute Man or some G.I. Joe guys or what have you. But we always had to go see grandma. And for me as a kid, like I was probably in elementary school, maybe 4th grade, 3rd grade. And the thing was, like, I was so proud that grandma was working at the grocery store. Like that was like having your grandma be president of the United States. Like grandma was working at the Tomboy and the thing was everybody in our town knew grandma because not only did she work at Tomboy, after Tomboy closed, she worked at Dierberg's, which was the bigger kind of chain that I talked about last week. And even when she was in her 80s, she still worked at Dierberg's. She wasn't a checker anymore, but she was a sampler, which was a great job for her. What she would do is on the weekends, Dierberg's would have all these sample stations set up. I think it's like, I don't have a Costco membership, but I think that's what they do. And so like some days she'd make little pizzas and have little samples or shrimp or, some kind of a dip, some kind of like little snacky drinks. And she would sample and everybody from church would see her. Everybody knew my grandma. I am not kidding. Everybody knew Ruth Raltman. So that was pretty cool as a kid. Also, speaking of that, whenever you went over to grandma's, and let me tell you, I'm curious if this is true in your family or not, but one of the things my grandma was known for, and you can ask my wife, is that she made the best and the weirdest looking chocolate chip cookies. You never, and you're thinking I'm exaggerating because sometimes I do. When I went over to my grandma's, once I started driving 16 or older, but all the times up to that, there were always chocolate chip cookies in her cabinets. And it was always the one, if you were facing the sink, it was the far left on the second shelf. I will never forget where the cookies were for the rest of my life in their house. And they were in a tin. They were always in the same tin. It was a Schnucks, which is a grocery store bake. What it was, I don't know if you've ever bought those like butter cookies around the holidays, but they come sometimes in these metal tins. And, the cookies are all in there with like tissue paper and stuff. That's what she had. It was a tin that she kept from buying at Schnucks. And for some reason, my entire life, that is where the cookies were. And the funny thing is that there were always cookies in that tin. You could not go to her house and not have the tin was never empty, and they were always fresh. So grandma must have made cookies, which I didn't realize when I was younger. She must have made cookies every 2 or 3 days, and they were so good. She just made them by hand, didn't have really a recipe. Now I will remember that when Paige was in second grade, they did a project where they made a cookbook to give to the parents for like a Christmas gift. And what we had to do was you had to give one recipe, the best recipe you have in your family, to submit to the book. And then everybody got everybody's recipes for a Christmas gift. So what recipe did we get? We got grandma's cookies. So we went over to grandma's. Paige was like 7. We sat with her because she never wrote it down, but we wrote down what she was doing, how much she was using the vanilla and the chocolate chips and the egg and the what have you. And it was so cool because Paige got to spend time with my grandma, which Paige is my stepdaughter, but she's my daughter. And it was just cool that she got to see grandma the way I got to see grandma growing up. So then she loved grandma. So is Pam. Pam loved grandma too. So I don't know how you feel about your grandma. There's a million stories. She always would take us to the St. Louis Zoo, and she would take us like the craziest way. She would never stay on the highway. She'd go through all these crazy neighborhoods that right now they're dangerous neighborhoods. Every night on the news, you hear somebody getting shot on these like same streets we used to go down all the time. Grandma didn't care. Like grandma she saw the good in everybody. And she did so much for us. When I played baseball, and I played a lot of baseball, sometimes I was on 3 teams at a time. She would always be there, and she'd always bring me some gum. I remember I was stuck on Gator gum in high school, and she would always buy me a couple of packs of Gatorade gum, and I would chew a new piece every inning I pitched. After I got the third out, I'd spit it out, and then when I went out to pitch the next inning, I'd put in a new piece. And she always had that gum for me. And there's just this show could go 7 hours with grandma stories. But in conclusion, as I'm wrapping this up, it's so fun when you're running, you're out there for a couple hours on a run all by yourself, or you're sitting there kind of thinking about the next day, getting things together, laying in bed and you can't fall asleep, thinking about all those people in your life that as a kid, you probably didn't appreciate how much they did for you. Because I know there's so many people just like, you guys right here, the patrons, you guys are helping support me live out my dream. I couldn't do this podcast without your support, but there were so many people in my family that did that. My dad sacrificed, my mom, my wife sacrifices a lot of time so I could do the shows, but grandma, grandpa, friends, when you really, really think about it and you're laying and you have a still moment in bed and you just think about it. Like I thought about grandma and it wasn't sad. Like I miss grandma a lot. Trust me. I miss all the folks that have passed on. But the thing was, it was happy because I think about us doing the Lord's Supper and I picture all 4 of us right now as grown adults in our 40s trying to all sit on that little stoop in her kitchen to have like a shot of grape juice and a Ritz cracker with a little peanut butter smattered on it. It's so funny. But I don't know if grandma intentionally did these kind of things like with the cookies so that we'd have this for the rest of our life. But I'm glad she did. And I can share more stories, but I don't want this to go too long. It's a mini podcast. We got enough shows out there in the main feed. I take way too much of your time and I'm sorry for that. I will tell you one quick thing about the cookies before we get out of here. When my grandma passed, of course, my grandfather had passed first. So that was kind of the end of my grandma, my grandpa, and didn't have them anymore. And the one thing I told my dad, I said, okay, I know you got to sell the house and, we got to get all of her things, given away and all that stuff like she wanted. I said, there's one thing I want from grandma and I want to keep it forever. He's like, what? Couldn't figure out what it was. I said, I want the cookie tin. I said, I want that cookie tin. And because it was just, my uncle, when he'd come in for Papa Blah, first place he would go is get the cookies. Even, everybody that I knew, everybody knew grandma had the cookies. And so you would go in and get the tin, grab a couple cookies, boom, put them back. And it's all beat up. It's dented, it's scratched. That is the thing I have and I treasure. I swear, I am not kidding. If this house was on fire, this computer that I do the podcast on would not be saved first. One of the things I would go get, there's a few things. I get our wedding album and stuff like that, but I would grab that cookie tin because that is how special that is to me. And watch my Instagram. I'll post a picture of it today so that you can see it this evening. So you can see it because it means a lot to me. It doesn't mean much to you because it's just a cookie tin. But it's stuff like that that keeps things in your heart. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Give me some feedback again. I love to hear your stories. So give me some stories like you have related to this over at patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. But until we get back together again, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon. Thanks, everybody. See you later.